Welcome to I thought it was 84, but I just realized it's about week 85. When I get up into these big numbers, I kind of lose track. So it's the artist's curse. So today, hardboard. Working on a piece of hardboard, just so you guys know. It is 30 by 24. I decided to go a little big. It was suggested that I do a snow scene, so I went through all of my specific references. I had a hard time. Actually, Anna sat down with me and we were making decisions because I had a lot of decent ones. Decided to pick this kind of spring snow scene from off of, I think it's Highway 89. No, it's not. Two something. It's between Truckee and North Star. And it's just this beautiful area. We got all this warm brush cutting in. Now, I didn't like this area up here, so I grabbed another photograph that I shot, and I'm going to put those mountains in and these kind of trees with this scene. I will often do that if I'm painting on site too. If I'm painting on location. I want to move a mountain over one way or take a tree. Like if I were to paint this one, I would take that tree out because it's right in the center. So, or move it way over to where it is here. In any event, one of the things about snow, I'm actually following suggestions given to me last week. Someone said, how about a snow scene? So I thought, great. And since Tahoe just got snow, and I think they're going to get another, they said 6 to 8 feet this week, it might be appropriate to do it. It's also winter, it's Christmas, although this is obviously spring, but there's some really interesting things going on. There's some water in here. There's some dirty brush in here, beautiful orange brush back in there with some greens and things in it. There's the trees, which are basically, I'm going to use these trees. One of the things I wanted to mention about snow is white, okay? I don't think I'm rattling any cages with that. Snow is white. So therefore, one thing we need to know about white is will show shadows more than any other value or color, right? Go black, it's hard to show a shadow on black, But if we get it white, show nice, strong shadows. The shadows are very influenced by the sky. And the snow undulates. So a lot of times there are subtleties. For example, there's a plane right in here that angles this way. And then at this point, it goes flat. So I'm going to amplify this, make it a little bit bluer so that snow feels like it goes down, then it comes out where it gets flat. It's going to get the brightest color. What I'm going to be holding off on is going as bright as I can go right off the bat, which as bright as I can go is white. And I actually, for my palette, I actually laid out a little warm white, Gamblin warm white. But then I have a lot of white laid out because it's snow. I have Naples yellow ochre. I have a little bit of a cad orange hue, alizarin crimson, a lot of ultramarine. I squeezed in a little Prussian because I could probably get it by adding green, but I threw it in anyway. I have a light blue, a sap green, and a asphaltum. So that's my palette, and let's get going. Basically, just going to kind of sketch in, and every now and then you're going to see me hold this up, and that's so I'll start with that. I do want those hills. It just bothers me up here. I like kind of this undulation. I don't know if I like this part, but I definitely like this part. So I think what I'm going to do is probably crop this here, and we'll bring in this from right about almost midpoint. We'll bring in a little bit of an angle. And this is a little bit of an ultramarine and asphaltum together. And then we're just going to kind of sketch in. We get a little sky back in here, these mountains, and we get another mountain kind of coming down this way. So we got this little sliver of sky. All right. Then we're going to find this line, all right, which is this line. And I kind of like some of this stuff over in here better than this. So I'm combining these two. This is my main one, but I am going to be looking at this. So I'm going to take, for example, the top of the trees and just kind of sketch them in, not in terms of up and down, but just kind of where they go. Simply because it comes across almost straight. All right. And obviously we get trees going up and all over the place here. So this is the mountain. These are the trees. Sounds like this is the church. Here's the steeple.
Here's a question. I will ask you really quick. Is hardboard different than MDF? Is hardboard better in your opinion?
It's not better. It's a little bit different. MDS is a little bit slicker,
Yeah.
and it's thicker. I like MDS a lot. I get hardboard because it's a little lighter weight. Birch is even lighter, by the way. It's a little lighter weight. And other than that, they're both great. I've painted on both. I'm not a snob when it comes down to painting on surfaces. Some people say, well, I can only paint on, I know a couple of people that only want to paint on Clausen's linen. Great, I like it too. I like switching off. You get different effects and you learn a lot by switching from one to another and not getting hung up with, I can only paint on this. I had a friend of mine when I was illustrating, his name was Bill Garland, great illustrator, fantastic drawer. Bill had this, I'm just using this part right here. And then I'm going to switch over to the rest of that. So if you'll see me holding this up, that's why. So this little piece right here is this little piece right here. I just kind of like some of the areas back in here that dot this. Anyway, this guy, Bill Garland, his concept, he said something to me one time I thought was quite interesting. He said, I want to be the kind of artist that if I were stuck on a desert island, I could still do art with anything that's available. And I thought, interesting. I kind of like that. Kind of like that whole philosophy about not necessarily being handcuffed to any one form of whether it's a surface, whether it's a brush, whether it's a medium for that matter. It's kind of who I am. I like, and I do, but I'm not trying to put down any artist that has a specific way. I only like to work with this medium. I only like to work on this. That's great. If that works for you, that's wonderful. Okay, I'm going here. So we got that tree. And I'm probably going to do a lot of shifting around as I move through this piece. Now, at this point, it's about midpoint. So I want to bring this down a little lower. Because this goes up. Anyway, this goes up. And when I start painting in shapes, it'll make more sense. Yeah, right now I'm just using contours and placement. Or as I like to call it, placeholders. It's a placeholder, and a placeholder to me means I might change that because I'm holding it here, but I don't necessarily think this is the best spot. And until I start getting shapes in, I personally am not a good judge. That's this. Now we're going to go down to this, which is about in here. And then we'll go to the foreground, which is about here, comes up, goes over. This comes up. This whole area in here is probably about in here. Want to get that up maybe a little bit higher. And that's enough information for me to start with. Now, let me state this real quickly. If I were doing a studio painting, I probably would spend a lot longer on just the placement of the drawing. But the reason that even in a studio painting, sometimes when I start laying in masses, I realize I don't like the way I've placed things and I might change them. So we're going to start from the back to the front. Now the back isn't this. Remember, I'm using this. Now the values are similar, but it's almost a white sky. And a white sky tells me that it's probably not white. It's probably has a little bit of yellow in it. So I took a warm white, a little bit of Naples yellow, and some white here, along with some medium. And we'll just kind of lay this sky up in here for right now. Got my handy dandy gesso brush. I use it a lot on these big, giant studies, as I like to call them. I very often use this brush. And I shouldn't just say I only use it in these circumstances. No, I use it sometimes in finished paintings when I start them, because it frees me up. I don't feel as confined as I do with a brush. It's really a beautifully perfect brush. So I like being kind of a little freer and a little looser in the beginning. That was a little thin. I had a little too much medium in it. Working on you can see the value of the board slightly darker than my hand tone.
Tom was saying that you mentioned a while ago that you thought of possibly trying a nocturnal demo.
Yeah.
So you'd love to see that. Not sure how
Well,
how you would video, but
no.
it'd be cool to watch.
You mean a nocturnal outside demo or a nocturnal? And there's two ways. I can do a nocturnal demo from reference that is nocturnal, or I can do a nocturnal from what I call kind of flat lighting and make it nocturnal. I can go either way with it. I've done both. That's the reason I say I can go either way. All right, now let's get these mountains in real quick so I can go back to this. These mountains, you can see, I'm going to take the light blue. I'm going to take the white and the warm white, a little medium, and I want to paint them probably lighter than they look. And let's see what this looks like. A little darker maybe. So I'll throw a little ultramarine into it. A little ultramarine, maybe just a touch of alizarin. And we'll kind of go down here. I want those edges, nice edges that feel good. I want edges that don't feel too sharp, too over-defined. That's just a personal preference for me. I just like things to have a little bit more freedom. The reason that I put that sky in first is now I can relate this value and that color to that sky color. If I didn't have the sky color, I might paint that too dark, particularly on this surface. So, okay, let's leave that alone. Let's come forward. There's other stuff going on in there, but I don't want to deal with it now. So got the base value. This mountain's a little bit darker, and then this mountain's a little darker, and then we come down to our trees, okay? So with that in mind, I'm going to take the same color I was just using, but throw a little bit of green, a little bit of brown into it, and I threw too much in. So I'll go back with a light blue. That mountain, I don't think that's dark enough. Nope, not. So throw some ultramarine and some brown. Ultramarine, and let's try this. Okay, that feels better. Maybe a little darker, a little more ultramarine, a little more asphalt. A little darker, not much. Oh, that looks just about right, I think. I'm guessing, as I always do when I paint. That's what you do. You make educated guesses, and experience gives you a lot of information so that as you progress as a painter, your decisions may be a little bit more accurate, hopefully. Get a little bit on the top of that mountain, a little bit of dark. So I'm going to use the color I got right now. Just tickle it in there. A little bit right in here. That's a little darker than I wanted. I want it to stay as part of the mountain, not really pop off. So any of these little areas that I actually wasn't going to put them in, but as long as I got this color on my brush, I figured, what the heck, let's use it, because this color and value is just about what I want here. And particularly as I mix it back into this paint, it's going to lighten up just a little bit. Okay. I think that's about right. We're going to leave it in any event. Now we're going to let this mountain overlap down the way it does. Come over in here. Then we're going to go in with this, which is a much darker value, which is close to that value right there. All right. And it's a bluer. So basically, I'm taking the same color I just used. I threw more ultramarine blue into it, maybe a tad of green, because I see a little bit of hint. Now we know that's green. We know this, but it's not. That's pretty good. I'm going to go a little bit greener, maybe a little umber into it. A little, I should say, asphaltum. I use asphaltum and umber interchangeably. That's probably going to work. It may have a little bit, touch more green into it. Not much, but just a little bit. Okay. And to get the edges of the trees, you don't want to just let your brush do the work. Let your brush make the feeling of those edges. So you don't have to go back, particularly when you're painting quickly, you guys. I mean, something I found on a couple pieces I've been working on my own lately is I've been painting more like this. as like my demos. And then I reevaluate, go back over the things that I think aren't working really well, and things that are working pretty well, I leave them alone. I leave that initial lay in. So let me thank you for allowing me to do these and learn a little bit on my own. Every time I paint, I feel like I learn something anyway. And you all should too. Sometimes they come out good, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come out fair, sometimes they really don't work at all. See, the edge of those trees, that looks like trees. It feels like trees back there. So to me, that's fine. Now I want to kind of come in the whole area, even though I see a lot of variation. I see it get just a touch, must come closer to a little bit darker as it moves over to this point. So I threw a little bit more ultramarine, a little bit more umber or asphaltum into it. And we'll just get a little bit, it gives me a good starting point. And I've mentioned many, many times that what you're doing is you're always setting up for that next stage, that next layer. So that's what this is. This is a setup for whatever comes on top of it. And if I don't have time, I'll probably leave it alone. Probably won't put a lot in there, even though I see a lot of movement and activity down in here. Now it works its way over to a little bit of this color. But right now, the main thing I want to do is just get a tone, get that base in there. I'll take a little bit of light blue because I see it as it comes down. Often what happens is mist or your air that is illuminated sometimes sinks down into the valleys. And so sometimes it'll appear lighter down here than it will up here. As it does here, I can see it. So we're going to kind of leave it like that for right now.
What medium are you using?
What medium?
Is the paint thin?
Yeah, the paint has got a little bit of, the paint's not thick. It's got a little bit of a mixture of, what did I put in here? Safflower oil and a little bit of the fast drying, what is that?
Solvent-free gel.
Solvent-free gel liquid, which I recently bought and am trying it. So I'm going to take that color now. As long as it's easy if I just work from this color forward. So I'm going to go in with this mass of trees here as opposed to there. So what I'm going to do very quickly is, if I can find another piece of tape here, I was going to tape this right up over it. There's a piece of tape here. Just so I don't have to hold it. That's all. And then I'll pull it off if I move down. So I got a piece of duct tape that I just ripped off. We're just going to stick that up there for a second. All right. Also, it allows you to see what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I wanted to explain again what you're doing.
So I'm working this area here, and then I'm going to switch over to the other print. So we're going to go with this layer of trees right in there. And I'm going to go kind of for the dark, but not real dark. It has a warmth to it. It's green, it's umber, and it's probably about there. Holy smoke. Now I got too much residual. See the residual paint I got in here? So I'm going to get a lot of that out of there.
Okay, I'm going to move this because you kind of.
And I'm going to make it a little darker because I've squeezed all that residual out. See what that is like. It's probably, that's a little too light. Okay, got to get some medium in that. Because you can feel it as you mix it if the paint feels too dry. And if it feels too dry, like I'm going to have to really work to get it to go down, I add medium. And when I was first learning how to paint, that was one of the biggest hurdles that I had to overcome, was learning the right consistency. And there's no fast way of learning that. I wish there was, but it's getting a feeling for the paint. There's a lot more warmth back in there. I pulled in a little bit of cad orange hue. I'm looking right here. We're put that tree. Now we're going to start to get kind of approximately the kind of tree shapes. And I'm using this brush to do it because it's pretty effective for doing it quickly. Because if I just lift up right, I can make the trees feel like pine trees. And there's some that are way back there that get lighter. So if I want to, off to the side, I have a lighter version of that color, just because some of that blue stayed there. And there's the lighter trees, but there's a little bit more warmth in them. So there's the lighter trees. Every now and then one peeks up from behind. So we can put that in there. Go back to the darker. Don't want to spend too much time, but I want it to feel right, because I don't know how much time I'm going to have to go back in and really complete it. I hope I have time to go back and add some lights. I think I will if I play my cards right and work my time appropriately. Big tree right there, a little bit bigger. So I keep picking up that color behind. So every time I do, I'm going back and adding in a little bit more umber, asphaltum, and green so that I don't lose the darkness. Because this paint, as it contaminates the paint I'm putting down, affects every other stroke that I put down. So I have to kind of think a little bit differently. So we're going to come all the way up here, get some of these. And I see, it's really weird. As I really look at that, I see a lot of orange back in here. Odd that I do, but I do. I put some darker ones in front. Now let's go over to the left. I think I just kicked the camera.
Again.
It's a big painting, guys. So
Yeah.
as I move from right to left, sometimes I'm gonna hit that tripod. But let's get these. I'm talking too much and not getting enough
Sorry for the adjustments here.
work done.
Try to-
Anna's doing a little bit of adjusting here as we work.
Okay, I'm gonna block your foot so you don't bump into it.
And
Maybe.
darker as we move over here. Just like this, a little darker. So what do? A little bit more ultramarine, a little bit more maybe even orange, and we'll just kind of, it's not a lot darker, just a little bit.
Oops.
We're going to kind of bring them up here.
Okay.
The trees that are way back there, I'm just going to smear it right into that color. Maybe bring a little bit more orange into it, because for some reason I see a little bit, actually it's more of an ochre. It's not an orange, right back in here. I'm just mixing it into that color. And I'll come over it a little darker. So we get layering. Something to think about. You're actually painting layers. The trees behind aren't as pronounced as the trees in front. And when I say pronounced, I mean value. So we're getting all those trees in. Now I'm seeing some blue. So I threw more ultramarine into that color. And there's a tree right there. There's a tree right there. Paint through it because I'm looking at two different pieces of reference. If I were painting on location, I'd be just looking at two different locations. One maybe work to the right of the other. Because for design, you're doing it for the sake of design. And okay, that's pretty good. We're going to kind of leave it there for right now. That gives me a pretty good feeling. I see some trees down here, some snow. I'm going to have to switch back to this in a little bit, but I'm going to pull it off so you guys can see what I'm doing. And now I'm going to look at this. So what do I want? I want that tree. That's part of my, and I didn't go down far enough here. Some trees down here. We're going to take that tree and move it just so I know as a placeholder. That's where that tree is going to sit, right there. Very important. Another tree right about here. Some of those are a little darker, so if I want to, I can take. This is why you don't want to go too dark too fast. Take a little bit of my ultramarine, a little bit of that, and we can go. See how much darker it is? There. Go a little darker here. And that just literally begins to bring it more forward. And there'll be some of that back in here. But as we paint that dark back into this, it blends into the color, so it won't come out quite as dark. Okay. And I'm going to lay off that brush for a little bit. I think before I do, I want to get one more placement slightly off center, about here. Well, I'm using the other, remember I'm using 2 pieces of reference. So we're going to take now, and we're going to start in with oranges. And then I'm going to paint the snow in, the shadows of the snow. But we're going to start in I think I'm going to start with a dark and then put the orange on top. Because the light, where's the light coming from? The light is coming from, obviously from the right, slightly behind. Why? Because these front planes of the snow before it goes into the water are in shadow. Tells me that the front planes of the orange sagebrush, whatever it is here, gets a little darker. So let's take a little asphaltum, a little white. I don't want it to go really black, but I want it dark. I want a little bit of warmth, a little bit of blue, a little bit of asphaltum. And let's see what we end up with right about here. A little warmer. I'm going to throw some orange into that. Cat orange hue. Okay. Let's get it in there fast. There's no sense in trying to make it perfect because I'm going to come back over it. And back behind in the background, get a little bit of it, but a little lighter. So I threw a little bit of white into it, not a lot, but a little bit. And we'll go, I threw too much white into it. I can see right now. Okay. Actually, I was probably pretty close because I keep forgetting how dark this is. Right back in here. Back here, down here, a little bit more light in it. Right there, it goes up and over. Start to get some colors back in there. And we get this plane right here, right there. And it goes up and over, down, and then we get all this part of this hill in there. So I'm going to cool it off just a little bit. I'm going to put kind of a nice little placeholder of, and that hill is, I should go back to this for just 1 second. I'm going to put it in here. Okay. That's about right, because we're combining the two. Okay. So we got this in behind it. Now we're going to get a little bit of this foreground in, just so we kind of have it in there drawing wise. So almost the same color. Placeholder more than anything. Slightly lighter. Very thin. Goes up. Works its way almost all the way up here. And then at this point, it goes kind of straight, almost just slightly uphill. Okay. So we can leave that alone. And we're going to come in with this. Again, placeholders. They're not exactly, but they're going to give me an approximation of where I want some of this stuff. Like right in here. Don't sit there and try to make it perfect. This is a real good example. Something like this is a very good example of how you don't want to start off too refined. The refinement happens. This is true with all painting, I believe. Refinement, and portraits too. Refinement happens as you progress into your painting. Refinement, it isn't refined from the beginning. Sometimes it's bordering on abstract. That was a hard thing for me to learn, by the way, just as being so much of a realist as I was when I was first learning how to paint. I was so hung up with it looking real that I couldn't let go like this. I think fast painting, learning how to paint quickly, forces you sometimes into exactly what you need to do to loosen up. Because people have asked me, I've been asked by fellow artists, some who are really wonderful painters, how did you learn to work with such a big brush? And I said, truthfully, it's more of a time thing. You learn by forcing yourself to work quickly. Then if you get the whole painting done as I do in this 90-minute segment, then you can go back and really refine it if you want. You can go back, spend another 30 hours on it if you want. You know, that's an individual choice, and how loose or how refined you like your painting. If you like your painting to be more refined, if you like painting to have more color, you may want to throw more color into it. If you like your painting more refined, you may want to refine it more. If you like your painting to be loose, you might even loosen it up a little bit. You might take some big brush and smear some things together. The only way you find what you like, not only to do, but what you like as a result, is to try it. You know, a big influence on me was a show that I went to in the mid 80s in San Diego. It was a Sorolla show. In that show, there were something called his apuentes, his small, quickie studies. That is truly where I first got the idea of doing quick little studies, quick paintings, and eventually turned it into a course at the college I was teaching at that became quick studies. That's really where that came from. It really came from some of the Sorollas that I saw. I don't even know if Anna knows that. Did you know that?
Yeah, it's when Ian was like weeks old. I think,
Yeah.
when we went to that show.
Very. And as I started trying those, I learned stuff that I went, why the hell didn't I try this before?
Mitchell was saying it's so easy to get caught up in details early on. He's struggling with that now with a portrait, and he has to slap himself back off.
It's portrait is one of the areas that you can really get hung up early with details, because you don't want to lose the likeness. I know, because I put a lot of time into a drawing. If I'm doing a portrait, say for commission, if it's a portrait just for practice, different story. But if it's a portrait for commission, I will spend a lot of time making sure I have that likeness down. I just see a piece of light. I know I'm using two different photos, but I like that kind of band of almost trees that tend to be right in that region. So I'm kind of put that in there. It's very slight. All right, now I'm probably going to go back, and I think I'm going to start putting the snow in. So I'm cleaning this brush, getting a lot of the dirt out of it, dirty color.
Glare.
Once I get this dirty color out of it, throw it over into my bin of junk. So we're going to start laying the snow in. All right. I'm going to switch back to this for a second, because I'm going to look at, so we're going to see me put that up. There you go. So we're going to put that snow in where it goes up, just in that one spot. I don't want to go all the way to white. So I'm taking my warm white with whatever residual paint I have in my brush, because I don't want to go all the way to white yet. I want it to be light, and I threw just a tad of ultramarine into that color. It's going to look white, but it's far from it. So I'm going right here. And there's some trees that come in front of it, right? So I'm not going to paint those trees right now, because they sit on front. And it's just kind of a waste to paint it and try and paint snow around them. Okay, gotta go right there. A little bit of snow. Gotta go a little warmer, because I see it. I threw a little tad. Not tad. I'm sorry. I threw a little bit of Naples yellow into that color, just a little bit. Some of this is just placeholder stuff, by the way. Come down here behind this tree. That's in shadow, but we get light over here, right about in here. So I'm going to pull this light. And where do I want that? Look, right here. It's right here. So I've got it right. I did pretty much the right thing right there. And on that side of the tree. And there's some shadow in there, so we're going to want to get that. That's pretty much what I want in the background, I think. I may want this down a little bit further. It's a little darker as it goes down. I'm throwing a little bit of light blue into that color. Not much, just a little bit. You probably can't even see it. But the one thing I want you to be aware of is I have not used anything close to pure white. So I've given myself room to move that direction. So I'm going to take the same color and I'm mixing up a lot more white, a little bit of light blue, a little bit of Naples, and whatever I've got in the brush that's dirty. And we're going to start laying in the bigger masses right about in here. So we're going to look for this. But at this point, we want to switch, remember? So I'm going to pull that back, and that's this area. So now I'm going here. And then down. I got to put more medium. I don't know if you saw how dry that stroke was. See, when I got that, I knew that told me right then and there that I needed to loosen my paint up with a lot more medium. So a lot more medium, a lot more paint. Here we go with the medium again. All right. Why do I want that? Because look, I can lay it in there and keep painting with it. I don't have to sit and fight. So I'm looking right in here. Try to point these areas out that I'm looking so you can kind of see where I'm kind of picking and choosing. This little piece of light that comes down here. Little piece of light that's back in here. I want to put that in because I want to paint the growth over the light. A little bit more blue. I'm seeing it not quite as bright back in some of these areas. I'd rather paint too much than to paint too little. In other words, I'd rather cover more. Now we got this big mass in here. Now, and remember, I mentioned I was going to do an undulation. So we're going to hit the bottom at this point. I'm stepping back for a second. I'm looking to see if the patterning feels good. Yes, it feels good. It feels a little too dark. It feels like I have too much contrast, which means this is probably too dark back here. I was a little bit concerned about that, very simply because a little light, even though I'll tell you what, I was a little concerned about that simply because I'm painting on such a dark surface. And that will affect things. So we get a little piece of light back in here. Piece of light back in there, drifts down, over, it comes up, over, and then disappears. Kind of.
Laura wants to know if you'll use radiant white if you need to brighten any areas.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. If you will use radiant white if you need to brighten any areas towards the
end.
end.
I don't have radiant white out today. I actually just bought a new tube of Winsor Newton white titanium, and that's pretty much what I'm using right now. But yes, it really comes down to not painting too white in the beginning. That's really that's the key in this whole thing. You paint too light in the beginning and you cause yourself problems later on. Okay, we're going to do this. Now, I want to get a little bit of that undulation, and I'm going to start it right now rather than wait till later, this area right in here. So what I'm going to do is right next to that color I was just using, I'm going to take white, light blue. Oh, that looks pretty good right there. I made maybe just a little alizarin, so it violets up on me just a little bit. And let's try it right here. Here, that's pretty nice. It's just a touch darker and cooler. We can go a little bit. I don't know if you can even see the difference, you guys. I know these cameras aren't that bright when it comes to that, but there is a difference. This is slightly cooler and just a touch darker. We're going to bring it down here. And this undulation is going to happen. Going to sweep up a little bit, maybe a little bit more ultramarine. Whoop, I think I went too far. But it doesn't have to be exactly clean and flat all the way. Okay. Geez, that's working. As I step back, it's working better than I thought. That's a good sign. Okay. Now this is going to come down here a little further. And then it's going to flatten out to back to the lighter color, because it goes this way, and this way. So now we're going to bring it back. We're going to bring it back here with a lighter color. And I've messed up a couple of my placeholders, but that's okay because they were in the wrong spot anyway. And that's why I mentioned that to you. Just because you put them in there doesn't mean that's where they're going to stay. And that's why I generally don't draw too tight or too refined in the beginning when I'm doing stuff like this, because I like the opportunity to be able to move things around a little bit. So we're going to come in with this plane, beautiful plane back here. Light plane up to that tree. And off on this side of the tree, back in here. I'm looking right there. And I may do some improvising, which means I'll just make some stuff up. Use what's there, but at the same time, make things work maybe a little bit better design-wise. Into that tree, get some lights kind of peeking through it. Don't want to worry too much about too much of that. Okay, let's figure this out. Comes out to about here. I'm just about right there. Want it to come out a little bit further. There we go. Take the blue again if I need to. And bring a little bit of it in. A little bit more down here. There we go. Bring that up there. Okay, it's undulating pretty well, for lack of a better word. All right, so I'm going to keep moving down. We're going to go back with the white, the basic white color I was using. And we're going to come in right in here. Right here. Up here, up to over. Let me see where we're at. Whoa, I'm behind where I wanted to be. We're about 40 minutes into it, not quite, but I was hoping I was 30 minutes into it. So I'm about 10 minutes behind where I'd like to be, which means I either talked too much or I painted too slow. Probably a little bit of both. It just means I'm going to be a lot looser in certain areas, which in some respects might be good. It'll force me not to tighten up too much, which is not a bad thing. Going in here, coming down here. Oh, I like that kind of mix of paint there. Got to be careful every time I pick up that paint. I got to clean my paint up that I'm going to lay down next time. We want to go that way with it, and we want a lot of in here, just really kind of loose. Trust yourself. Use your arm. Don't necessarily always paint with your wrist, particularly on big paintings, but I even think so on small paintings, truthfully. Okay, little pieces of light right about in here. Back here, right, looking right there. So you know where I'm peeking. Then across here. Okay, so let's get that water in. And the water is kind of a blue. Darker than this, so I'm going to take ultramarine to the same color I was using here. And we're going to try it right here. I think it's a little bit of violet into that color. It's not so pure of a blue. So I throw a little a little alizarin in there. That's a little too dark, I can tell, but that's okay. I'd rather have it be a little too dark right now. And I can always go back and adjust. And that goes back to my, don't be afraid to be wrong. If you're afraid to be wrong, quit painting. Because trust me, it's going to happen. No matter how good you get, no matter how good you get, you're going to do things that you go, what was I thinking about? Now, as that water goes over to the right, obviously it's catching more of the sky in here. So I just added white to it. Paint's too dry, add a little medium. Now paint flows. Little tributary kind of works its way down here. Go back to a little darker color, a little bit more ultramarine in it, a little bit more alizarin, and we'll work it back right in. Not, geez, I thought it was dark enough. Let's try it again. That's a little bit better, right about here. That sneaks its way back, all the way back in here, kind of peeks through some of that brush. So that's why I didn't paint the brush in. Okay, so we're mapping it in, so to speak. It's a way, it's a terminology that I kind of like to use in this instance because it's mapped in. It's not 100% correct, but it's mapped in pretty much where I want it. And there's things that I do like, and there's things that I don't like, and that's par for the course, huh? Okay, so let's start in on some of those snow shadows. I'm going to take a little bit of a smaller brush. Well, what do we got here? Let's take a number 12. I think that's a 12, flat. Nice, one of my rosemaries. So we're going to take almost the same color I was just using here. A little darker though. So I'm going to add maybe a little bit more ultramarine to it. So it goes just a little darker. Now that's that's so pretty. Geez, that's this color right here, I think. Pretty close. As close as I can get in a quick decision. Probably could still be using my big clumsy brush here. I deepened it just a little bit. Get it over here. Get it over here. And now you got to be discretionary. Where else do I see that? I see it over here. Where's it? Where's over here? Here's over here. Okay, a little bit right in here. Just looking to see if I see any other spots. Maybe a couple of divots. We sweep it, kind of coming down. Okay, go back to the darker color, that pretty ultramarine. I actually have a little alizarin in that ultramarine, and we're gonna go. I'm gonna go in the midpoint. Do I see any in here? Little tidbits of shadow happening here and there off some of this stuff. Not much. I don't see a lot until I get up in here. And as we move back in here, I see a little bit in here and a little bit back in here. This is where I'm going to use, switch over to this for just 1 second. Okay. You see that beautiful undulation right there? I'm going to put that in right here. Okay, leave it alone. Let's go back in here, right up in here. That value and color looks to be pretty good. And then we get some striations from the trees. There's several trees. I like to put the shadows in before I get the trees in very often because the trees overlap the shadows. So we're going to get that in there. And then we're going to move over. Where else do we say a shadow right here? Long raking. These are called raking shadows. The sunlight is so low. This is late afternoon, by the way. Sunlight is so low that even at this point, this is almost going into shadow. So I'm going to go over the color that I use, bring a little blue into it. Now we get this really nice, cool spot right in here. And we're going to put that I'm going to put this back in here before I put the trees over it. Should have picked an easier one. This is pretty complex, more complex than I realized. But what the hell? Challenges are meant to try. So.
Well, and you decided to combine the two. So.
Yeah, but combining them isn't. It's just that there's a lot of stuff going on. So I want to put that shadow in right there, and a little bit here. So I'm overlapping. When I overlap, I pick up the color underneath. Remember that. All this right in here. We're going to take that and make it all. And I'm going to sneak out a little behind these trees so it comes out. Some of the stuff I'm just making up. So it feels relatively correct. That's the best way of putting it. But if I'm keeping the concept in mind. So if things don't, as long as I keep that concept of cool shadows, warm snow, it should hold together. All right, I've got to start in on some of these areas, and I'm going to take the first brush I was using. We're going to kind of clean a little bit of the dark color out of it just by, I'm not going to dip it in turp, but I'm going to rub on my paper towel, get so it's still got a little dirt in it. It's okay. I'm going to start with the orange, then I'm going to go to this, I'm going to go to the trees, this, and then everything will be covered. I was hoping everything be covered by now, but you know, it's the way it goes. So we're going to take cat orange hue. I'm going to take Naples yellow, mix them together, and it's super intense, way too strong. So I'm going to bring some ochre back into it. Threw a lot of ochre in and a little bit maybe of white thrown back into that. It's starting to get there. Maybe a little alizarin because I think I oranged it up a little too much. That's a little too strong. It's real thick. I kind of like the thickness. So I'm gonna tone it down with a little of my asphalt and just so it isn't quite as intense. So the reason being, I want to be able to put intensity back on top of it. Remember that. I don't want to, every color is not going to be right on the money now. So we're going to start. Got to pull this off for a second. Playing games here. So we're going to start right in here. First two strokes, a little bit too light and bright. A little bit more asphalt and a little bit more alizarin. Let's try it again. That's working. It's coming a little bit better. Okay, we're going to bring it over here. Now I haven't mixed any medium into it, so it's going down kind of dry, but it's actually kind of neat. That's a little too thick. I want it painterly. I want it really thick. A little darker. Feel like I'm going a little too light, too fast. Come over in here. Now I kind of take, remember I try to keep a brush with my whites in there so I can actually come down over this here and there and give the kind of edge qualities that is necessary. And that's pretty good, what I just did there. Pretty good in terms of what I was aiming for. Keep going darker. I don't know why, it feels too light, too fast. I do want it. I want that brightness, but not yet. I want to be able to come over it with one, kind of like I am with the snow. what I'm going to do at the very end is really brighten up some of this stuff. One of those bushes comes way up. So we're going to do that. You can see, look at the difference in the color from where I first started. So if I get rid of that color, that's maybe where we want to end up. But and we have some of these kind of sneaking out from just a little bit here and there. This goes down a little bit more, bring it down into that brown, and it kind of blends together. So it kind of does the work for you. And that goes back to that line that I use, let your brush do the work. If you're trying to control too much, particularly in landscapes, you want the brush to let your brush kind of create the illusions that you're trying to create. And as you paint, which I haven't done, I've only stood back one time, I should be standing back a lot more. And I will in just a second, as soon as I kind of get this laid in a little bit, a lot of it back here, a little bit over in here.
Laurel would like to know, when you neutralize a color that's too strong, what are your strategies?
So when I neutralize the color, what is my strategy? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Strategy is to use its complement or near complement. And it's just a matter of, if I'm using a lot of red, then I want to use something close to a green to neutralize it. But if there's a lot of orange, then I'm going to use, something like a blue slightly to neutralize it a little bit. So it's pretty easy. And that's truly why I use the blue and the brown a lot. For me, you can use red and green to create darks, but the blue and brown works really well for me in creating near blacks, gray colors, things of that nature. There's a lot of effects in here. Like I want to get that up behind that tree. So it goes behind it. And then this kind of runs together. And then we get a little bit of just a fringe and a lot right about in here. And we get kind of this loose, oh, that's good. And you get the overlapping. So if I stand back now, it's starting to hit what I want. There's some things that I think are off in terms of drawing, but overall, it's okay. All right, so we're going to go there. So that's where we're going to lay off. We're going to lay off that. We're going to go into the other kind of lighter tones, which this is more ochre. It's a little bit lighter. So off to the side, I'll take some white, brown, maybe a little blue, throw into it, some maples and some ochre. I don't want to get too warm on me. Excuse me. It started to get too warm, so I threw a little green into it. And there you go with what I was just saying. No, it's still too warm. More green. And maybe some ochre. Let's see what we got here. That's better. The asphaltum has a lot of red in it. So I have to counter that with throwing either some green or blue back into it when I use it.
So when you're orange,
this reminds me of a shouldn't be saying this because I'm complimenting myself, and I don't mean to be, but it reminds me a little bit of a couple of fetchings, Nikolai fetchings that I saw of snow scenes that are just really indicative. They're really not refined at all.
So when your orange was too strong, you used blue.
I used blue, exactly. Blue and green, both. Because if the orange was kind of red, and you just kind of trust yourself. You're going to get to the point where you're just going to feel it. You're going to feel like, oh, it's too this, I've got to add a little bit of that. And you become more sensitized to color nuances the more you work. Truthfully, in the beginning, I will point things out to students and they say they don't see it. And it's there. They just have to, accustom their eyes to looking for it. Or acclimate their eyes, I should say. little bit of more of a warmth back in here, so we can throw some. Gonna pop some darks back into that too. I'm copying, but I'm not. I'm improvising a lot just because of time. I know I would improvise a lot on site because you don't have the time to be 100% accurate. You just paint what you see and feel, and not the exactness of what you see and feel. So I'm going to throw a little bit more green in just because I felt I was getting. Now that went way too green on me, but let's see what happens with it. That helps. I don't want it to feel too much one color. So I'm going to warm that up with some ochre, and I'm going to come forward a little darker up in here with maybe a little bit more asphaltum. And we'll start right about here and overlap. Well, let's start right about here and overlap some of it, a little darker. Asphaltum, I have some blue thrown into that too. Maybe it's a little too blue. A little bit more orange into it. On the banks. A little bit more ochre, a little bit more asphaltum. I should have hit. I got my white, so I can go back. I can hit in between. This is the kind of stuff that's fun at the end. It's not fun right now. I'm playing beat the clock. But it's really fun if you have time at the end to just finesse some of the stuff that you begin to see. Like the bank of the river comes down right there. And see, it also reflects, now that I just see it, back in the water, right about there. Yep. Okay. And while I've got the same color, let's do the same over here. Bring a little light in. On the bank, up, just hits a little bit above this. Okay, that's working okay. A little bit up in here. I can see a little bit more blues that I could throw down in there. So I got the blue. A little bit in here. Little tiny pieces of cool that I'm beginning to catch. But again, that's what you're probably going to do more as we go into refinement. And I don't know how much time I'm going to have for refinement. I'm a little bit off in timing. Where am I at here? Yeah, I've got about a half an hour left. And I was hoping that in the last half hour to be able to go in and do refinements, but I'm still doing lay-ins. Which means I'm going to paint faster right now. And I can talk and paint fast. So I'll try not to ignore you. Right there, go back. Thankfully, I have clean brushes and I can go back and pick up one thing over another. There's a blue right there too. I can see it and I missed it. And you get a reflection right here too. Okay, so I'll take the blue. And where did I see it? Right in here. Gotta be a little darker than the water. Oh, what the heck did I do? Don't like it when I do that. Picked up too much of one color. It's just overpowering right now. So I'm going to go here. It's probably a little too strong. It's not too bad. undulating snow. It's starting to work. I don't know how much time I'm going to have to get all this stuff done. Let's see. I darkened the color just by dipping into another color I already had on the palette that was dark. I already had kind of mixed up. Just more, a lot of darks, a lot more darks over in here. I can see it. And it covers up the water. And up here, oh, that's good. Son of a gun. Finally made a stroke, I think is really good.
Just one?
Right there, that the weed. That's good too. I'm catching the look of the weed without really laboring it. It's one thing I admire when I see other artists' paintings. All of a sudden, if they achieve something without it looking like it was labored, I'm fascinated with that. Okay, it's shaping up. This could definitely have some more darks here and there, but I need to get this foreground area done, and it's a little bit lighter, a little more ochre. So I'm adding the same color I was just using, ochre and a Naples yellow light. More. Still not there. That looks better. Okay. Yep, that's better. And I'm going to use a dry brush. This is where the big brush really helps you guys. You probably go a little lighter, so I'm going to take more Naples and more ochre, move it down in a separate spot so it's not mixed so much, and we'll just lighten it a little bit with some dry brushing. And up in here. And a little bit over in here, kind of intermixing with a few other colors. A little bit more asphaltum. Really some nice darks, asphaltum and blue, right up in the foreground. Maybe a little bit in here where you see some of these right along the riverbank, or I wouldn't call it a river, it's just kind of a flow of melting snow. Along the edge, not warm enough. Ultramarine and asphaltum straight. I've just got to get some darks in here. Too blue, so I threw some more red into it. Still too blue, so I threw some more alizarin. I feel like I can use the darks up here because it's foreground. Right here, let's just do a few little areas right in here. Just overlap some of the snow a little bit. Same in here. A little bit of water, just spotted it. Whoops. Right here. Nope, not light enough. More white. into that blue, and we'll just, still didn't do it, but that's okay. If I have time, I'll go back to it. I want to go back and start. I want to do a little bit on the trees. I'm dividing my time now. I've got about 25 minutes. So I'm going to work a little bit on the trees and then work my way forward. First of all, let's put this up for 5 minutes. Take a look, see if there's anything I need to do. A little piece of snow. I like it, actually. Right there, sneaking back through. All right there. Anything I need to do in here? Yeah, let's make this a little stronger. And let's get that blue. A little bit more of it. Also, something I did see that I didn't get earlier, but I want to get a little bit of more back in here. Okay, let's put a couple of those trees overlapping. Take my dark big brush, because I've got a dark one and a light one, mix up a green and a brown together. And I've already got other colors in it. So we're going to take that tree. It's a little too brown. Throw a little bit more ultramarine into it. And we're going to overlap. And then get the trunk. I may have to grab a clean brush for the trunks. Let me grab what do we got? About number 6. There we go. And there's a few. So we're do 1, do 2, 3. A little thicker than I wanted. Beggars can't be choosers when you're working right up to the very end. A little tree that overlaps. Tree that's lighter. Down to about here. And that's where a lot of those shadows are coming from. Right from that point. Some trees back behind. Another little tree overlaps right here. All right. Any of the others I want to get in there? Yeah, let's get some of the lights. That's about it. Let's see over in here. We got to get some of these trees right there. Right, whoops. Too thick. So I'm using, again, both this, and we're going to pull that off. Just don't have time. And we're going to use this. Now, you can see a lot of little snow, light snow happening back in there, which is really kind of nice if I can get it in there. I don't know if I can. I think I'm going to use it. Go back to my lights. We'll pick up a little bit of light right here. Whoops. We have it here. And I want a little bit, if I can get it, I'm going to use, we've got a small brush. Here we go. My liner, for lack of a better brush, just because I want some small little strokes. Little pieces of snow. Now we're going to get overlapping trees. Oh, come on. Some of them are warmer. I'm gonna take my big brush and I'm gonna light the trees. Ochre, green, into the mucky muck I've already got. Let's see what we got here. Not bad, a little bit lighter, maybe a little more ochre, a little bit more white, but pretty close. So we're just gonna start to rim light some of these trees. And some of it is just busyness. You just got to paint the busyness because you just don't have time. And I'm approaching it much the same as I would if I was on location. Only difference is I would probably have a little bit more time to do more layers. A little bit more ochre. Let's get some light on these trees over in here, like this big one. I'm having to add a little bit of Naples every now and then because as I paint, I contaminate the color and I pick up a lot of that color that's underneath. So we're painting the feeling of light on the trees. That's really what it comes down to. I like to put them in and then go back with the dark and overlap some of the dark trees on top. And if you do that several times, you'll be surprised what you can get by with. You'd be surprised how effective it can be. Let me step back. It's okay. There's a lot more warmth back in there. I threw just a touch of orange into that color, believe it or not. We're going to go right back. We're going to hit a little bit smaller strokes for the trees that are a little bit further back. Some of them come down and they catch light all the way down. There's one little one that sneaks up from behind, little pieces back in here. Some trees get light all the way down. We get a few more in this area. Okay, let's leave it alone. And let's come up on the orange now. Got about what, 15, 16 minutes left, something like that. So we're gonna go take the cat orange light. Remember that color I started with? And I said, whoa, it's way too light. I wanna come close to that now. That looks pretty good right there, actually. Let's see what happens. We wanna hit the top and this. So we wanna hit that. That's pretty good. I think I can lighten it just a touch with some white. Yeah, that's pretty thick. And I like it because I tend to like very impasto kind of. So you get a lighter touch because I'm painting on paint. I'm painting on a lot of wet paint, as a matter of fact. So I got to be kind of careful. I can't be heavy-handed about it. If I am, it's just going to blend in. So what I'm trying to do is lay this color on top of that color. It's working. It's about where I want it. I think I can vary it and get redder at times. I'm going to add some more cat orange just for the hell of it and see what happens. And we're going to come right about in here. Yeah. All I did is just add more cat orange to that same color. Cat orange hue, I should say. Because it's not a clean, flat color. There's actually little greens back in there too. And I can go back in here. Oh, I like that. Nice thick. You guys probably can't see, but that's pretty thick paint. And I actually see some more ochres kind of coming through every now and then too. So I'm probably going to want to put some of that in. Because I want there to be enough variation where it doesn't look wrong. So let's take that and let's lean it more towards an ochre, which is a little greener. So maybe I'll bring a little blue and ochre into it. Let's see what that looks like. It's coming close. That's not bad. A little bit more blue. Okay. A little darker. Let's try it again. This is the kind of stuff that is really fun. And if your paint dries on you and you're going to work on it for more than one day, you can really layer it, texturize it. I'm going to lighten that just a little bit as it goes into the back right there. A little bit lighter, a little more ochre. Let's try it again. Get some of those color variations back in there. Okay. I'm going to leave that alone. I would like to go further with it, but I want to give myself enough time to brighten the snow at the end too. So a little dark back in here and make that one bush go behind the others. And again, do not be afraid to go back and push your darks if you need to. And I guarantee you probably need to. I do. Stepping back. Okay, keep going. Let's keep moving. This is almost abstract, but in a way I don't mind that. I'm going to take that water with my lighter brush, add a little bit, and get a little brighter here and there, and right about here. A little greener than I want, so I'm going to bring just a tad of alizarin back into that color, just a little bit to mellow the green characteristic. And that goes back to what we talked about when I said, when the question was asked about when you get a color that's too pronounced, too intense, you kind of neutralize that color, so to speak, with its complement. Now, I can see right up in here, it gets a lot lighter, gets a lot more reflective light from the sky right about here. And the snow is down there too. So I can actually bring some snow, white, right about here. Stronger right there. Blue, I'm going to throw some blue into that color. We're going to push it back here a little bit further. Step back. Well, I got that color on here, something I didn't do earlier. A little bit of water right in here. I love these little tidbits of things like reminiscence of water and things that happen. Little snow right here and a little bit. Let's get a little light on the edge of that snow right there. A little piece of snow right in here. Okay, I'm stepping back. Now I'm going to throw a few more darks, and I'm going to brighten the snow. Darks. Go back to my darker brush. I won't deal with. I want to contaminate. So we're going to go ultramarine and a little bit of orange and a little bit of asphaltum. And we're just going to push a few little darks here, because I kind of destroyed a lot of them when I was going so fast. So the ultramarine, and the faster I paint, for some reason I learned this. I don't know why, but the faster I paint, the thicker I paint, because I don't take the time. And sometimes I actually like the results better. Not, as I said, sometimes, and that means not all the time. Oh, it drips. Don't like the drips. So what do? We fix it. Okay. It's the water versus the snow. Now, that's the water. It's all water there. That's snow there. So I might want to hit a little bit of there. A little bit of little weeds popping up every now and then. We got a few here, a little bit here. Clean it up at the bottom. Over in here, a little darker. I think I could go a little darker right about in here. And then some of those darks can be pronounced a little bit more up here. It's coming out. This bothers me. It's a little flat, but I do want to be able to amplify the snow. Look, I've got a little over 5 minutes, 5 to 10. So we're going to bring a few trees down just because it's a little busy. It's because I'm using 2 photos. And there's things I like in this photo and things I like in the other photo. So that overlapping is what gives depth. If you don't get enough overlapping in, you're not going to create the depth. And went a little overboard in the thickness of some of those, so you can always go back and trim them down. Okay, let's punch that snow if we can. So I'm going to get it clean, and I'm going to get most of that color out of my, and I'm going to take white. I'm going to, in a separate part of my palette that I haven't contaminated, and warm white. And I'm going to put some medium into it because it's pretty dry. And we're going to start to pull brights. Look at that. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a lot brighter than any of the whites that I put down initially. I'm going to step back for 1 second. Yep, it works. Whew. This is, I wanted to leave myself more time to do this, but I can make it somewhat effective in this amount of time. I want to make this plateau more pronounced. So now it feels like the snow, it's a snow bank. So I can take those same brights. Now I can really brighten up this. And well, I'm glad I laid out a lot of white, warm white, because I've used almost all of it because I'm going so thick. I'm stepping back every now and then. I just want to see if it's working, and I am very pleased that it's working. It was my concept that it was going to work, but when you're laying these values in and these colors in, you're never quite sure. You assume that it's going to work just fine, but you don't know. Okay, that's working pretty well. White, and I'd love to be able to go back into the trees one more time, but I just don't think I'm going to have time. Keep stepping back. All right, I want to come in here and do a little bit of lightning. That thick paint is really, for me, I like thick paint. So when that happens and it works, I'm very pleased. Sometimes you use thick paint and you go, it doesn't work. So you feel, now you got that, this hill going this way and down, and it actually works pretty good. Come back in this plateau, because this is pretty flat back here, so it's pretty much one color. I'm just gonna let this kind of touch down. So we get a little bit more light back here, just a little bit, peeking through. Okay, I've got about, call it in just about a second. So I'm gonna some bright lights up in here. Would love to have done a little bit more to it, but it's keeping pretty loose. It's relatively effective. I don't like the cleanliness of this edge. I might want to chop that up a little bit, make it feel like one bush goes back behind another. I can see a little snow every now and then, sneak back. Just, you don't want that edge to feel like it's been groomed. One more thing and then we'll. Trying to get that light, piece of light right there. And the way this ends up going from light to shadow. And this is where you just, judgment calls, you just decide, do I want to chew something up a little bit more? Am I happy with it? But you try and make those edges feel appropriate. Trees are working okay. I don't think they're great. I think I could go back with one more layer of darks, just to kind of clarify a little bit. We can take my little liner and pull some more tree trunks down. We don't want them too much the same when they're one maybe there, maybe a couple over here, a few in here. It's just a matter of how far you think you can go with this, what you can do. But for lack of being able to get any more done in it, I hope that this gave you an idea. It was a great challenge. I don't know who suggested this, but I thank you. Just because I tried something that was maybe a little bit beyond me. Boy, I got a lot of paint in my hand there. A little bit beyond, maybe a lot beyond me for this amount of time frame. But you know what? If you hadn't suggested, I wouldn't have tried it. And so it came up okay. I'm not completely embarrassed by it. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. I always get a lot out of these Friday things. If nothing else, by a lot, I mean, I've got about a stack of probably 80 pieces over there. A few have sold, a few have gone to galleries. The intent isn't for that to happen, but when that happens, that's fine. So we're gonna, a friend of mine just, I think Chuck Pyle was a very good friend of mine, said, as I get closer to 100, I have to kind of come in with something spectacular. And I have no idea what the hell that's going to be. I might try 30 by 40, but I'll tell you what, it won't be anything this complicated if I do. In any event, I got paint all over me, so I'm going to wave with this hand. This hand's got enough paint on it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike.
Show that in.
Okay.
A ton of paint.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Keep painting.
Thanks, everybody.